Hey everybody, I'm East Coast Pete. Welcome to Mid-Rock Crisis. Yeah, I've been talking about the Rolling Stones today. You may have noticed that up until now I really haven't done shows about the main big bands of our time because, they're just so big. They'd have to take 3 shows or 4 shows even to explain anything at all about them. And for another reason, these big bands, they tend to knock out the shows. Like I did a show about Radiohead, and Facebook said I did a song about Black Sabbath, same thing. I imagine that if I did a song about the Rolling Stones, same thing would happen. So instead of Stones, I'm going to do a show about Ian Stewart. Ian Stewart, a Scot, born in 1938. He saw a lot of the wartime, 7 years of Hitler. In the 60s, he was piano man and co-founder of the Rolling Stones. In 63, he was removed from live performances by new manager and star maker Andrew Loog Oldham because he didn't look the part. He remained as road manager and studio pianist. Before all that, he started piano lessons at the age of 6 and played banjo in local bands. He loved R&B and the blues. He was the first to reply to Brian Jones' ad for musicians. 1 month later, Mick and Keith joined. Dick Taylor played bass and Mick Avery played drums, both soon replaced by Bill Wyman and Charlie Watts. But Ian Stewart was right there. This time, Stu, as Ian was known, worked at a chemical company, so he was the one with the van to travel to the gigs, and he handled bookings on his phone at the job. It's unclear if this was okay with his employers. In the middle of 63, Oldham said Stu shouldn't be on stage with the others. Stu was not a bad-looking guy, but his jaw was square, like a Hollywood leading man. Oldham also felt that 6 members were too many. Probably saw the Stones as the anti-Beatles even then, so it was unclear, at least to me, that Oldham thought Stu was, too handsome for the Stones, but maybe not cute? Probably the former, since no Stone was ever thought of as cute at that time. They were the anti-Beatles after all, right? The rest of the band insisted Stu stay on as a recording artist, and Stu offered to be road manager. He wanted what was best for the band, but also he wanted to be a part of it any way he could. Stu was well known for his generosity. So, Stu would replace guitar strings and set up Charlie's drums. He also played piano and organ on every Stones album for 20 years, all except Some Girls and Beggar's Banquet. And he also was not on their Satanic Majesty's Request. Mick would aver that Honky Tonk Woman was all Stu. When Mick and Keith started to write their own songs, Stu was their critic. They trusted his judgment. Other keyboard players for the Stones included Nicky Hopkins, Billy Preston, and even Ian McLaughlin. But Stu favored the blue numbers. Anything remotely Robert Johnson-esque. Stu also liked the country rock numbers like The Last Time and Dead Flowers. What Stu didn't like was to play in a minor key. He just wouldn't do that. Stu was also witness to the chaos of the Stones. He said, The money the Stones have made has not done them any good. In fact, it's gotten them into trouble. And Stu steered clear of the recreational drugs. When Brian Jones died, Stu knew drugs had been a gradual factor. His friend was zombified. Stu was dismayed at the partying and drug arrests that followed or preceded Brian's passing. Now, Stu, as road manager, would book the band in hotels removed from hot spots, presumably to take advantage of the fresh air and golf courses. But it was more likely to keep the boys' names out of the headlines for living up to their growing bad boy reputations. Stewart played outside the Stones as well. He had an appearance with Led Zeppelin on Led Zeppelin 4, on Rock and Roll, and on Physical Graffiti on Boogie with Stu. Now we know who Stu is. He was on the Howlin' Wolf London Sessions album. This also featured Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, Klaus Voormann, Steve Winwood, Bill Wyman, and Charlie Watts. In 1982, he played on Bad to the Bone with George Thorogood. Stu was having increasing trouble breathing. In December 1985, he went to a clinic to see about it, but he died of a heart attack in the waiting room. When the Stones were inducted to the Hall of Fame, the band requested that Stu be included posthumously. Keith wrote in his autobiography called Life, "I'm still working for Ian Stewart," is what he said. "To me, the Stones was his band. Without him, we'd be nowhere." In 2011, Bill Wyman returned to play bass with the Stones for a Boogie with Stu tribute called Boogie for Stu. It was Bill's first time back in 19 years. I was in the Beatles camp as a teen. I didn't get the appeal of the Stones until I was 20 or so. I followed them ever since. My favorite era was with Mick Taylor. My close second was the early High Tide and Green Grass era with Brian Jones, and of course Ian Stewart. But the Stones have had a lot of different eras, and certainly one of the longest careers of any rock band. You ever hear that joke, how at some point in time we're all going to have to decide what kind of future we're going to leave for Keith Richards to be in? I do love the old music. I find it curious that I didn't like it at first. I remember seeing him on the Ed Sullivan Show. I was like, God, these guys are ugly. Look who's talking, East Coast Pete. Well, see you next time on Midrock Crisis. Thanks for being with me.